There are two yards on the same street, same neighborhood, same trees, same general environment. Both have feeders, both have water, both have owners who genuinely want birds. But in one of those yards, there are 3 active nests this spring. A robin pair in the dense shrub near the fence, a chickadee that claimed the nest box in February, a house wren working on a cavity in the old oak near the back corner. In the other yard, nothing. The feeder gets visited, the bath gets used occasionally, but no bird has built a nest in that yard in years, and the person who maintains it cannot figure out why. The difference between those 2 yards is not luck. It is not the quality of the seed or the style of the feeder or anything the owners did in the last few weeks. It is a set of specific, accessible conditions that nesting birds evaluate before they commit to raising young anywhere. Conditions that took months or years to establish. Conditions that, once you understand them, explain exactly why birds nest in some yards and avoid others entirely. And the most important of those conditions is probably not what you think it is. Welcome to Bird Minds. Today we are going into exactly why birds never build nests in certain yards, what they are evaluating before they commit, what most yards are missing without the owner knowing, and what the presence of an active nest actually tells you about everything you have built in your outdoor space. Stay until the end, because the final section reframes what a nest in your yard actually means, and it is more significant than most people realize. Before a bird commits to building a nest anywhere, it runs an assessment that is far more comprehensive than most people imagine. Choosing a nest site is not like choosing where to land for a few minutes of feeding. A nest site is a commitment measured in weeks. It is the location where a bird will invest everything, energy, time, exposure to predators, in a single reproductive attempt that may represent its entire breeding season. Getting that choice wrong does not just mean a failed nest. It means a failed year. So birds assess nest sites the way any creature would assess a long-term commitment, carefully, repeatedly, over multiple visits across multiple days before anything resembling construction begins. What they are evaluating falls into 4 categories: predator safety, food proximity, structural suitability, and something less tangible but equally important, the behavioral history of the space and the humans in it. Most people focus entirely on the first 3. The 4th is the one that explains why yards that appear to have everything still end up with nothing. The first thing birds evaluate is whether your yard can keep a nest safe, and safety from a nesting bird's perspective is almost entirely about vegetation structure, not the amount of vegetation, the type, the density, the architecture of the cover available. A nest placed in a thin ornamental shrub that looks full from a distance but has no dense interior is a nest that a crow can access from above, a cat can reach from the side, and a snake can climb to from below. Birds know this. Before they commit to any location, they assess whether the vegetation around it provides the specific kind of concealment that makes a nest genuinely difficult to find and reach. The vegetation that birds consistently choose for nesting has specific physical characteristics: dense enough that an approaching predator cannot see the nest from outside the shrub, thorny enough in many cases that physical intrusion is genuinely difficult, positioned at a height that puts it above easy ground-level access but below the open canopy where aerial predators hunt. American hollies, hawthorns, viburnums, native roses, these plants appear repeatedly in research on preferred nest sites, not because birds have aesthetic preferences, but because their structure provides the specific combination of concealment and physical deterrence that keeps nests alive through the weeks of incubation and chick rearing. That robin pair, nesting in the dense shrub near the fence, did not choose that location by accident. They spent days assessing that specific plant, its interior density, its branch architecture, its position relative to the fence and the open lawn, before the female laid the first piece of nesting material inside it. A yard that is meticulously maintained, every shrub trimmed to a clean exterior shape, every dead branch removed, every interior opened up, is a yard that looks organized to a human eye and looks exposed to a nesting bird. The same pruning that makes a shrub look tidy removes the dense, tangled interior structure that makes it safe. Birds are not avoiding tidy yards because they prefer wild spaces. They are avoiding them because the specific physical architecture that conceals a nest effectively does not exist in a perfectly maintained landscape. The second thing nesting birds evaluate is food proximity, and the numbers attached to this requirement are the ones that stop most people. During the 3 weeks it takes a clutch of eggs to hatch and the additional 2 to 3 weeks before chicks fledge, a pair of nesting birds must deliver food to the nest at a rate that most people never fully account for. A pair of Carolina wrens, the same species working on a cavity in that oak near the back corner, makes an estimated 600 food delivery trips per day during peak chick development. Think about what that means for a bird the size of your fist. 600 round trips, 600 times locating an insect, catching it, carrying it back, delivering it, and going out again. Every single day for weeks. And that is only the wren. A pair of black-capped chickadees must locate between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars to successfully raise a single brood. That food has to exist within foraging range, typically only a few hundred feet from the nest site, for the attempt to succeed. 6,000 caterpillars within walking distance of your nest box. This is why the relationship between native plants and nesting success is not incidental. It is foundational. A single native oak tree supports more than 500 species of caterpillar and moth larvae. A non-native ornamental tree of similar size may support fewer than 5. The insect life that nesting birds depend on to feed their young is not distributed evenly across a landscape. It is concentrated in native plant communities in ways that make yards with native vegetation categorically more viable as nest sites than yards without them. The chickadee that claimed the nest box in February did not choose that box in isolation. It chose that box because the oak tree 15 feet away will produce enough caterpillar biomass in May and June to feed a brood of chicks through to fledgling. Remove the oak and the box becomes a structure the chickadee assesses and walks away from. The box was never the deciding factor. The food landscape around it was. The nest box that never gets used is often not in the wrong location. It is in the right location in the wrong food landscape. The third category is structural suitability, and this is where most people focus their efforts, and where most people make mistakes that are easy to avoid once you understand what birds are actually looking for. Nest boxes are species-specific in ways that matter more than most people realize. The entrance hole diameter determines which species can enter and which cannot. A hole sized for bluebirds excludes chickadees. A hole sized for chickadees excludes house wrens. Getting the diameter right for the species you want to attract is the single most important design variable in a nest box, and it is the variable most often overlooked. Height matters differently for different species. Eastern bluebirds prefer boxes mounted 4 to 6 feet above the ground in open areas with clear sight lines. Chickadees prefer cavities at roughly head height, closer to tree cover. House wrens will accept boxes at almost any height, but strongly prefer locations near dense shrubby vegetation rather than open exposure, which is exactly why the wren chose the cavity in the oak rather than the box mounted in the open corner of the yard. Orientation matters in ways that are frequently overlooked. Boxes facing south or west in hot climates can become lethally hot during incubation. Most ornithologists recommend facing nest boxes north or east to reduce direct sun exposure on the entrance hole during the hottest part of the day. And then there is the variable that most nest box guides do not mention prominently enough. Boxes that have been predated, that have had a raccoon reach through the entrance, a snake climb inside, a house sparrow take over and kill the residents, carry a behavioral signature that returning birds detect. Predator guards on nest box poles are not optional additions. They are the feature that determines whether the box you put up produces fledglings or produces a series of failed attempts that eventually teaches the local bird population to avoid it entirely. Now, here is the fourth category, the one most people never consider, and the one that explains the most puzzling cases. The yards with perfect vegetation, native plants, and properly installed nest boxes that still never attract nesting birds. The behavioral history of the space. Nesting birds do not evaluate a yard only on its physical characteristics. They evaluate it based on what they have observed happening in it over time. And the category of observation that matters most during nest site selection is not food availability or predator pressure. It is human predictability. A yard where human activity is consistent, where the same person moves through the same spaces at the same times doing the same things, is a yard that nesting birds can model accurately. They know when to expect disturbance and when to expect quiet. They can calibrate their behavior around a human presence they can understand. A yard where human activity is unpredictable, where people move suddenly near vegetation, where noise levels are inconsistent, where disturbance arrives without pattern, is a yard where a nesting bird cannot accurately predict when it will be disturbed during incubation. During the 3 weeks a robin sits on eggs in that dense shrub near the fence, she needs to be able to predict when it is safe to sit and when to flush temporarily. An unpredictable human presence makes that calculation impossible. Researchers studying nest site selection in suburban environments found that yards with consistent low-disturbance human presence had measurably higher rates of successful nesting attempts than yards with equivalent physical characteristics but less less predictable human activity. The birds were not responding to how much humans were present, they were responding to how predictably they behaved. This means the most important thing you can do to attract nesting birds has nothing to do with what you plant or what boxes you install. It is how you move through your yard, how consistently, how quietly, how predictably, day after day through the months when birds are evaluating potential territories and making decisions about where to commit this year. So here's what a nest in your yard actually represents. Not coincidence, not luck, not simply the result of having the right equipment in the right place. A verdict, reached after repeated assessment visits across multiple weeks, after evaluation of your vegetation structure, whether the dense shrub near the fence was genuinely impenetrable or just dense looking, after evaluation of your food landscape, whether the oak could produce enough caterpillars within foraging range, after evaluation of your nest structures, whether the entrance hole was the right size, the pole guarded, the orientation appropriate, after evaluation of the behavioral history of every human who moves through the space. The moment a bird carries the first piece of nesting material into your yard, every part of that assessment has already been completed. The bird looked at everything available, every yard within its territory, every potential site within foraging range of adequate food, and chose yours. 3 nests in 1 yard. A robin who found a shrub dense enough to trust with eggs. A chickadee that found a box with the right entrance hole 15 feet from an oak with 6,000 caterpillars inside it. A wren that found a cavity in a tree in a yard where the human who walks past every morning does so quietly and at the same time and without sudden movements near the places birds are trying to raise young. None of that was accidental. The yards that never attract nesting birds are not bad yards. They are yards that have not yet provided the specific combination of conditions that tips the assessment in their favor. Dense vegetation takes years to establish, but it begins this spring with a single native shrub in the right corner. A native food landscape develops slowly, but it starts with 1 oak, 1 viburnum, 1 plant that supports the insects a nesting pair will need in May. Human predictability is available immediately. It costs nothing, and it begins the next time you walk outside and choose to move quietly, consistently, without sudden changes near the spaces where birds might be considering building something. The birds in your neighborhood are evaluating yards right now, running the calculations that will determine where they commit this breeding season. The question is whether your yard gives them a reason to stay. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a bird build a nest somewhere in your yard that completely surprised you? Where was it and what did you think when you found it? I want to hear the specific moment. I read every single one. I will see you in the next one.